This is going to be the first country to disappear from the map. Just imagine that for a second. An entire nation, the ancestral home to thousands of people, literally ceasing to exist in the physical world. It's people left with no homes, no land, and no country. It sounds like the plot of a dystopian film, right? But this is a very real, very present crisis unfolding right now in the South Pacific. Welcome to This Explainer by the Global Issues Daily. Today we're examining a geopolitical and environmental emergency that is setting a genuinely terrifying precedent for human history. Tuvalu, a nation on the absolute verge of being swallowed by the ocean, and the totally unprecedented measures its government is having to take to ensure its soul survives, even if its soil doesn't. Okay, let's dive into this. To fully map out this crisis from the micro to the macro, we're going to cover 5 key areas. First to disappear, the anatomy of the crisis, the transition to the first virtual state, the geopolitical chessboard, and finally, the global ripple effect. Part 1. First to disappear. To really grasp what's at stake here, we have to look out into the remote Pacific. Tuvalu is a tiny nation of just 11,000 people. With a total land area of only 26 square kilometers, it's actually the 4th smallest country in the entire world, trailing only Vatican City, Monaco, and Nauru. But the foundation of this crisis lies in the very ground Tuvaluans walk on. You see, Tuvalu is a collection of 9 small islands, and 6 of them are what we call atolls. These are formed when a mid-ocean volcano sinks and coral reefs rise over the surface to accumulate soil. But atolls possess a fatal flaw. They barely rise above the surface of the water. The absolutely crucial metric you need to know here is 2 meters. That is the average ground elevation of Tuvalu above sea level. 2 meters. Its absolute highest peak is just 4.6 meters. The main island is so incredibly narrow that the local airstrip consumes nearly half of its width. So, at an average elevation of 2 meters, you don't even need a catastrophic tsunami to cause devastation. A routine, everyday storm is fully capable of flooding houses, roads, and agricultural fields. Part 2. Anatomy of the crisis. Let's look at the hard climate science driving this emergency. NASA's satellite data reveals a terrifying ticking clock. Between 1993 and 2023, sea levels around Tuvalu increased by 15 centimeters. That is 1.5 times faster than the global average. By 2050, NASA actually projects the capital will be half submerged during high tides, with flood days jumping from 5 to 25 every single year. And by 2100, 95% of the country will be completely underwater. We're not talking about a distant, abstract future here. 2050 is right around the corner. So how exactly do you fight the ocean? Well, Tuvalu is trying direct human intervention. They're artificially creating new, flood-free land. It's kind of similar to Dubai's massive artificial island projects, but obviously without Dubai's massive wealth. By 2024, they had managed to build about 19 acres of artificial land, alongside constructing 1,400 meters of protective barriers and concrete seawalls. But Tuvalu is a highly remote nation with virtually no tourism industry, relying heavily on international donations. So building this infrastructure is a massive, expensive gamble, designed just to protect them until 2100. The terrifying question is, what happens after that? Part 3. The first virtual state. Tuvalu's unprecedented Plan B to preserve its soul. This environmental emergency has actually triggered a profound legal crisis. Under international law, specifically the Montevideo Convention, a recognized sovereign country must possess a clearly defined territory and a permanent population. If Tuvalu entirely sinks, they technically lose both. So in a highly preemptive move to protect their sovereignty, Tuvalu has demanded the United Nations formally recognize that their maritime boundaries remain permanently theirs, even if the physical land vanishes. And to back this up, they've taken a step straight out of science fiction. Tuvalu amended its constitution to officially declare itself a virtual state. They're executing a 3-step survival strategy. First, a comprehensive 3D scan of the entire nation, literally digitally preserving their physical landscape, traditional dances, and ancestral stories. Second, a complete migration of all government functions to the cloud, ensuring they can operate in exile. And third, issuing digital passports. To date, 25 countries have formally recognized this virtual state status. It is a completely unprecedented move in human history. Part 4. The geopolitical chessboard. Because behind the scenes, there are massive global power struggles at play. We can see this in the historic Filete-Leonine Treaty signed between Tuvalu and Australia. This treaty highlights a fascinating dual dynamic of humanitarian rescue and strategic control. On one hand, Australia offered a world-first climate visa lottery, granting 280 Tuvaluans permanent residency, healthcare, and education every year. But in exchange for this lifeline, Australia essentially secures geopolitical veto power. The treaty legally dictates that Tuvalu cannot enter into any security or defense partnership with any other country without Australia's explicit consent. So why did Australia want that veto power so badly? Well, in the Pacific Ocean, Australia and China are direct strategic competitors. Australia explicitly wants to halt China's expansion in its geopolitical backyard. And this gets even more complex when you realize Tuvalu is one of only 12 countries in the world that maintains formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan, rather than recognizing China. By locking Tuvalu into this legally binding defense treaty, Australia is ensuring that Chinese military or diplomatic influence cannot gain a foothold in this part of the Pacific, regardless of how desperate Tuvalu's environmental situation becomes. Part 5. The Global Ripple Effect. Let's pan out and see why this is a warning bell for all of us. This crisis is defined by a stark, almost unbelievable global imbalance. Tuvalu's carbon footprint is virtually zero, yet they're the ones paying the ultimate price. To put that into perspective, just 20 nations, the G20, are responsible for 80% of all global emissions. Even Australia, the country offering them a rescue lifeline, is a massive global exporter of coal and gas. Tuvalu's leadership has bluntly categorized the continued fossil fuel expansion by these major powers as a literal death sentence for their people. And here's the thing, this death sentence extends far beyond the South Pacific. By 2050, a projected 800 million people worldwide are going to face critical risks from rising sea levels. We're talking about massive global economic hubs, mega cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, and Dhaka facing escalating flood threats. The projected global economic cost is estimated at a staggering $1 trillion. So you see, Tuvalu isn't an isolated incident, it's a terrifying preview of our global geographical future. Well, let's leave off on this thought. Decades ago, humanity faced a catastrophic environmental threat with the widening of the ozone hole. Yet global cooperation successfully altered that trajectory. The precedent for unified action absolutely exists. So, as we watch the first nation prepare to upload its very soul to the cloud, we have to ask ourselves, if humanity united to close the ozone hole, can we do the same before our global map is permanently redrawn? Thank you for watching this explainer that the Global Issues Daily. If you value this kind of in-depth analysis of the forces shaping our world, be sure to subscribe to the channel.